want to share a little bit. Thank you. I wanted to share a little bit about Vanessa before we jump in. And you might have seen this a little bit in the bio that I posted, but Vanessa is a parent empowerment coach who's known for her refreshingly honest, hands-on, and personal approach. I can attest to that. Vanessa empowers parents to find the calm, confidence, and tools that they need to address challenging behaviors, such as meltdowns, power struggles, sibling fights, and motivation issues. She helps families shift painful dynamics so that love can flow more freely between family members while they build resilient, lifelong relationships based on respect, appreciation, and love. Vanessa, you're also the founder of Raising Our Resilience, your Facebook group and your program that draws upon 15 years of classroom experience and your educational research background in positive psychology, Montessori, motivation, child development, and resilience, all at UC Berkeley. You also bring your life experience as a step parent and caregiver, member of the LGBTQ community, and mixed race person of color to create a safe, supportive, shame-free learning environment. You're just a badass. You work with clients in one-on-one private coaching as well as year-long programming. And I know you have so many trainings that you do in and out of that. So clearly you have the skills, and I'm just so thrilled that you're here to share it with us, because we do have a lot of parents who are also in the pause world, because I think our worlds do they cross a lot in terms of intentional shifts in behavior and what needs to be done, right? So I know you've got a pulse on what seems to be the biggest challenges these days with parents. Can we start there and just like kind of where are we at in general?
Yeah.
What's going on right now?
Right. Let's have some real talk here, friends. And first, I want to say too, like to me, high achieving women who also have children often want to be high achieving parents. And so, a lot of times when we come up against challenges like the ones I'm about to share with you, all these tools are so useful that Rachel's been sharing with you in this, sisterhood. But also a lot of it translates to parenting. So if you just by being interested in what Rachael does, you're already on your path. I just want to acknowledge that. Yeah, and because skills are so transferable. I mean, it's really about leadership, self-management, your personal resilience. That's the starting place. Yeah, but what I'm hearing from parents is that as the world is opening up, there's just a lot of transitions coming up. So, whether that's figuring out what the new morning routine is now that school's out and they're going to be traveling. So how do we make sure the kid gets rest, the kid gets up, that we have like smooth mornings no matter where we are. For some folks who are traveling. Others, it's like, how do we help our kid now socialize again? Because they've been kind of stuck in one household, together. But something that's like always going on around, some of the pain points, like things that are just sort of leave you with maybe feeling exhausted or stressed or, even guilty at the end of the day, is when kids have really big emotions come up, and whether it's because you've asked something to do and they don't want to do it, so now they're throwing a tantrum or in a power struggle, or maybe they didn't get what they wanted from a friend, and then you get a call that like, oh my gosh, my kid hit this other kid because they didn't know what to do with their anger. Like, it seems like what keeps happening, what I'm seeing is that when kids have big emotions, parents are often stuck and not really knowing what to say and what to do to help their kids have the skills and strategies and tools to be able to cope with those big emotions. So that's like a big one. That's a big piece. And if you can relate to that, please say something in the chat or the comments of this video so we know, that you're, same here. I relate to that. And maybe you can let us know like how old your kids are and one particular like kind of emotion or situation that comes up that's particularly challenging, so we can respond to that in this talk.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're not alone is what I'm hearing out there, and you have the experience, and my guess is just like you're hearing from all ends what is going on right now. And it is a time of transition. And like whether you're a parent or not is what I know we've just all been through in the last 18 months, and it continues. And that big emotional landscape is like all the more big, I'd say, right? And just present with all of us as we usually are with our families more, and we're learning how to be with each other and around ourselves in different environments. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like for the experience of the parent right now, there can be quite a bit of like a sense of grief, even of like losing a year, like your child, like losing a year of regular socializing or regular time with family or regular school even. So we're working through that grief of that loss. We're also feeling some anxiety around like, well, what is it going to look like? Is my kid behind now? What can I do? How do I establish a new normal when we come back to in-person school? Or if you've been in in-person school, like how do we navigate masking and not masking, or visiting relatives who haven't been vaccinated? Like, there's just so many factors that we just haven't really had to deal with before. And I literally feel like we've been in a resilience test. And what brings me hope and perspective around this, personally, and as someone who's working with families, is that because it's anytime you're tested, it's an opportunity to find out what your strengths are, and also an opportunity to find out like, where could I use some more tools and skills? And so in some ways, this has been an amplifier. It's been an amplifier of our personal strengths, of our parenting strengths. It's also been an amplifier of some spaces and in ways that we could learn some new tools and tricks. And how human of us, right? To be like, life is in session. We're human beings in progress and process. We're always, needing to learn and adapt as our kids, especially as kids grow up. So we have our world situation, and then our kids are also evolving and changing all the time, and we're keeping up with that. So I just might have a big, if I could, I'd wrap you up in a big old like empathy hug right now, everyone out there who can relate
Yeah.
to struggles, because the struggle's real. Like, it's not something we're making up, or we should be stronger about or something. Like, it's just happening. It's just happening.
It's just coming and happening, and it's part of where we are right now in our world. And I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage to be in this game right now with our world and as a parent and navigating. So the work that you're doing is so important. And I think a lot of parents, kind of like you were saying earlier, think they have to do it alone. And that's similar in the pause world, because I think we just think we got to figure it out, or we're doing what we can with what we know, but there's so much more potentially that we could learn or grab it or like get into, so that we could serve not only us, but our kids, and then everyone else is a little better off.
Yeah, often I know you draw a lot of high achievers into your world too, and we end up just having a lot more responsibilities too. And so, building in the pauses for ourselves and for our kids, because we can tend to pack the schedule. We can tend to forget to put our own oxygen mask on. And then our kids can also start to run a little ragged from, filling things up too quickly. So
Mhm.
I think this is a great opportunity. I would call it an opportunity for us to more deliberately and intentionally kind of design our daily life with kids. A lot of the folks who are coming to me right now are saying, Vanessa, help me with the routines. Help me like figure out what my kid can do independently, what I can expect of them, how to run things more smoothly. So when I drop them off in the fall to school, we're not looking like we just already had a 12-hour day, because it was like I had to remind them so many times. There's all this stress, we were rushed, they were trying to do too much at once or whatever, it's disorganized. Like, help me get organized around that. For example, it's just again, leaning into the idea of an opportunity here. Like, what if we get to very intentionally design like our routines and reestablish our kind of like our family values and expectations and rules and boundaries. So it's a shift. It's a shift, right? It's like life happened to us, like, oh, all these circumstances, but now we get to like be the creators, which is
Right. And so let's get into that, because there's so much to learn, I think, from you. And you were talking about, this is a time of transitions and just in like navigating our ways to use coping tools. So can you share maybe a couple? I know, like, I would love to learn some myself, because maybe they're even like, can people do them who aren't parents too?
Oh, for sure. 100%. This is like, this is just good for humans, right?
Yeah,
So
human tools. Great.
yeah, anytime we're focusing on like what's good for kids, we can kind of like, we can, basically backfill if we didn't get these tools as kids and have them now. Like, it's never too late, right? So even if you're not, a person with children in your care, these tools are great. So, I mean, the first thing is that, like, in terms of resilience mapping, like, I've determined 7 main areas that really help us all to have more resiliency. And the one I already mentioned was, these robust routines. And I know that your work, Rachel, often helps parents build in the pause, parents helps all folks who are in your world build in that pause into their routine. And you gave some really specific, great advice to my parents last month. We really, like, I got some feedback on, people were like, oh, that was so helpful. It doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be long. Like, could just fit it in. So building into your routines, self-care, like it has to be there, and finding specific ways to get your kids on board with what their routines are, using like what we know about how people learn. And one hot tip I can give you is that if you actually take the time to lay out what it is, then you have like a reference point, right? So oftentimes we're just like chasing down the tasks, like, oh yeah, this, oh yeah, this, oh yeah, that. But we just take, like, it can take 10 minutes and just sort of like, what are the things that are absolutely necessary every morning to get done, either with life with children or life without children, right? Like, what are they? And what is like the most agreeable order to do them in that actually makes sense and feels good? And then with the children, a big question you're going to ask, so this is with the kids, which of these do I think they could truly do independently, and which of these do they actually need my support to be successful in? And when you get really real about that question, you can have some breakthroughs around your routines. So that's one pillar.
Yeah. So checklists, I'm hearing checklists, like get a list of do's and then get them out of your brain so that you can empty that mental space almost to feel a little more relaxed. And I can tell you from my experience, I'm not a parent, but I parent myself a lot. And I think checklists are one of my main go-tos. I love them.
Yeah. So I'm glad this is a tool you've been able to incorporate, Rachel. And I feel like there's something special about creating that with your child, if you have a child in your life as well, so that they can see that modeled of like, oh, you can write it out. And what's really cool about establishing new habits is that it can take 10 to sometimes 20 weeks, right, to establish a new habit. That if you stick with it, it can become internalized where you don't even need the checklist anymore. Like now, when I walk into the kitchen, I immediately take out my vitamins and I take them, because it's something that I decided needed to be in my routine. I would attach it to this event of walking into the kitchen as my first thing I do when I get into the kitchen. And now I don't need to have a checklist to remember to like realize I've done it. I just do it now. So you can go from checklist to practice kind of in the lab of life. And then it just becomes sort of muscle memory and flow. And even like sort of the sense of mastery of like, oh, I know how to do my vitamin thing in the morning. I've got this down. So that's what's possible.
I heard it takes 33 days to create any new habit for an adult. And I'm wondering, like, for kids, it's probably different, but it's still like, even to make it stick, it takes long. So that's the kind of time frame we really do need. But we can change our routines, and it's important.
Yeah, and there's a really big variable there too, which is, did you design the routine, or did you design the habit, or did someone design it for you? So big difference in motivation in the first place to even get on board with it. So involving the child, getting their input into how it can go can be really helpful, or co-designing, right? So I have sat with parents in our collaborative document and like in their coaching sessions, and just like we hammered out an outline, and getting a chance for the parents to also like have a thought partner, like they do what I'm sure all of your clients have done with you, Rachel, at some point, is like, let's look at your day. Like, how are you running your ship, right? You can do that with kids too, right? So like what I've seen over and over again is that when parents get mentorship, or for you, like if it's moms and or just high achieving women get that mentorship, you get a model of the process, and then you get to go do that with like your team members at work, or your co-parent, or your children. And it's like a template for success. So there's so many layers here, but I think, starting with that checklist, getting clear.
What else? Yeah.
Yeah. Another one is, when you're wanting to establish a new boundary or set up an expectation, like a lot of us had to, for example, caregivers establish that when we leave the house, we wear masks. And that wasn't easy at first, but then finally the kids adapted and adopted, right? They adapted to the new norm, and then they adopted it as something. So we can see how this works. Yeah. So having healthy boundaries and clear expectations is one of the core pillars. And one of the things you always want to do is make sure that you're really clear about what it is in terms that the kid can understand. So here's an example. You might say things like, I expect you to clean up your room before you come to dinner. And that's pretty clear. Like, at least you know when it is, you know what the task is overall. But your idea of what clean your room means and what their idea of clean your room could be completely different things. Right?
What do you do? Yeah. So then
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. So there's this phrase that's I borrow from Positive Discipline, but I've just used so many times in the classroom, or my clients are using all the time, you know, whether they're in my year-long program in the immersion or in a private, you know, private client, they're take time out for training. So take a little time to actually train your kids and like, what is this expectation? And maybe there's even some gaps that they have that you need to fill. Like, you can walk into a room and notice there are 20 things on the floor. They can walk into the room and beeline straight through those 20 things to their Lego set, and not even like, it's not even in their world.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so take some, you could even train like, to notice, and even like take stop, like check the floor could be part of the training. Like, check the floor. Is there anything on the floor?
that could
Something.
be on a checklist.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I love the idea too of like walking through it with them, right? Like do it side by side, and train them as you go. Like, how do you, like, where does this go? Is it clean or dirty? And then it goes in the dirty pile. Like, things we take for granted that they just know how to do. They
Can I ask
maybe,
you a follow-up to that? Because
yeah.
this is like my childhood that I remember. Like, what if your kid whines or puts up like the meltdown, or just like has you in their crux, you know, and like what can you do at that point? What's the best approach?
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is a big one. It's good. So I would be looking at where they, you know, did you find a way to get them on board with it in the first place? Like, have you made an attempt to help
To
them
get their
understand?
buy-in.
Yeah, get their buy-in, and like have them influence how it goes. Even like, well, would you rather pick up your clothes first or your toys first? You know, giving them choices, letting them kind of run the show as much as possible, while you hold your expectation. If the big emotions come up, I mean, that's a whole nother piece that is one of the pillars to 7 is emotional resilience, emotional mastery, right? So what are my options as a parent when my child is upset? You know, you can emotion coach them, you can give them a little space and time. You can offer them a coping tool or strategy. You can also, you know, just let it go this time, and know that maybe you didn't take enough time out for training. Maybe you didn't, you know, get their input enough. So you're going to try that first before you attempt to get them to do the thing again. So there's all these ways, these nuances. I would say my number one go-to is to like make sure you're not fighting with the feelings. Because you can't say like, well, you shouldn't be mad about this, or you shouldn't be
Right.
sad about this. Like,
Like, yeah, I know this one too from my training and just like experience. And that anytime we just say like, don't, like, you're not feeling this way, it's you're not validating the person, and it just leads to not ever feeling seen or heard, and that just feels challenging, hurtful.
oftentimes it'll like cause more hurt, and then you're just in deeper and
Right.
maybe escalating things.
Like, honor where they are, right? Honor where they're at and where you're at. Yeah.
So there's this whole body of work out there that, okay, I'd love to share if we have time. There's like
Yeah, let's do it.
minute. So what we're finding in the research is that it's a blend between the two. So when you're validating an emotion, that's like very supportive, but that doesn't then mean not hold the line on an important life lesson or important boundary. So to sum that up, it's like supportive and demanding at the same time. And that's the blend that a lot of us didn't grow up with. We grew up with one or the other, or an absent parent, right? And but when those two things are there together, when you can be both supportive and demanding, and you add in an infusion of warmth, so you're like doing it in a warm and calm way, which is part of why I have a calm parent training coming up, and you know, a webinar on like how to navigate these big emotions, because this is not something you can snap your fingers and just know how to do, right?
Right.
But when you get there, kids get to have so much. Like, so warm, supportive, and demanding parents tend to have children who have better friendships, higher GPAs, higher level of life satisfaction. And this is asking middle schoolers, high schoolers, and adults to reflect back. And the ones who can say, my parents, I knew I was loved, I knew I was supported, and they had high expectations of me, they tend to achieve their the goals they set out to do. So that's part of that life satisfaction. They also, in adolescence, have less anxiety, less depression, less likely to drop out of school, less likely to engage in risky, unhealthy behavior, more likely to exhibit great critical thinking skills, to really go for their goals and be sort of internally motivated, to strive. Yeah. So it's like, we actually do, the good news is we have influence here, right? So if we can bring in a supportive, demanding, and warm style and tend to things like routines and boundaries and like, what do we do with big emotions? 3 of the 7 pillars, for example, we get to set up our kids for success, like in this like very, very well known way, right? And if things go sideways, it's like, well, we know we did what we could, right? So I think at the end of the day, I have peace of mind.
Thanks for sharing that research, because I think that just hits home why this work really matters as a human and as a parent, because you can make a difference and it's not set in stone. And what you learned as a kid doesn't mean it has to stay the same. Like, you can bring in new skills and learn them. And that's what's so cool about what you're doing. So thank you for sharing that. And I put it in the chat, I put a little research blurb in there. And all right, so we've got two of the things. We've got the list, we've got expectations and boundary setting with empathy. What would you say would be a third tip or tool that we can help to navigate these emotionals?
Yeah. Well, and I also want to just notice that the first 2 were a lot about like being proactive, right? So if you've got the kid on board and really learning the routine and really going smoothly, like you get to avoid those big upsets, a lot of those big upsets in the first place. And then the boundaries one is another one. Like if you're really clear and upfront about your expectations and you help and take time out for training for them to meet those expectations, again, you're getting ahead of the problem, right? So those are the 2. Now, if you're in the moment and it's happening anyway, I actually will piggyback on your great work, Rachel, and say, helping build in that pause to bring in more awareness is huge. And you were mentioning validating emotions. Well, a version of that is taking a moment to say, like, look, you look really upset, right? You know, like you're actually pausing to acknowledge that there's an emotion happening, right? Acknowledging their experience and building in that pause. So we can do that for them by just literally dropping in and empathizing and helping them name what's going on. And it doesn't have to be a 20-minute thing. It can be 10 seconds to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Just helping them make sense of their experience, right? So that's the emotion coaching piece that's in that pause. But sometimes to even get them into that moment, you have to do something that really uses your senses. So one pro tip I have is help them notice the sensations in their body that they're experiencing, right? Like, okay, it seems like your breathing is really fast. I see your chest going up and down. Your face is really red. You're clenching your fists. I see tears. You're kind of doing this with your mouth. Kind of tells me maybe you're sad. So we can harness our senses and our ability to tune into our bodies to create that pause, which allows that awareness to come in. So you're not just stuck in the emotion and cycling through like, you know, whatever thought is stuck in your head or whatever motion you're making, which can happen for kids. We get stuck.
Huge. I love that. Yeah. What a great tip. Using our senses. So like, what do we see? What do we feel? What are we hearing? What are we looking at? What are we smelling? Like anything like that can be so helpful, because it gets us out of my understanding is it gets us out of our subjective mind, because that's like data, right? Like you're like noticing like the red cheeks, and it's not like you feel sad, don't you? Like it's so different, you know. It's like that's a total judgment of them, and they might be, but if I'm just saying their cheeks are red, they might be like, oh yeah, like they are red. I'm like, what am I doing? You know, like I don't know. Just seems so helpful.
Yeah, it's such to tune into it, you know, and what it builds up this awareness so that we start, hopefully, you know, the idea is that with enough reps, right? Like with anything, you practice it enough, they can start to do that for themselves. How am I feeling? I think I'm feeling uncomfortable right now. Like that, what a great tool to have, right?
How cool would that be? Oh
situation, right? Or like, I'm upset, I should probably walk away and cool down first. Like, and I've seen it. So in the classroom, I had kids from 6 to 9, and I'd have kids come in at 6 blowing up all, like just lots of fire, lots of temper, lots of, emotion. And working with them for 3 years over that time, which parents, we have the opportunity to work with our kids for forever. You get to see them internalize that and actually start to notice how they're like, actually notice how, like, ask themselves that, what could be going on here for me? Maybe I'm sad. I'm going to go over to a feelings chart and see which one makes sense to me, or, ask a friend for some help, or do the coping tool. So creating that pause for them with using their senses, it helps get out of the subjective mind, like Rachel was mentioning, helps them get back into like what's true, what their experience is. And then occasionally it's also like we just need to like actually distract ourselves and redirect our attention away from like whatever the trigger was, whether it's a thought you're having over and over, or you're near a person who's upsetting you, or you're in a crowd and that's overwhelming. You can take some time away from that and just pause in that sense and kind of just notice, okay, I stepped out of the crowd. I'm just gonna, like a client of mine just did this and reported back this morning. They said, it really worked. We were in this crowded situation. She started to get upset, pulled her out and had her just look for everything that's red around her.
Yeah.
Slide's red, that leaf is red, that car is red. And she totally calmed down. It worked. And he's like, it felt like a magic trick. I'm like, well, you're just engaging the mind to focus on somewhere else, on things that are just plain facts, like you said, true, and give your brain a break from maybe cycling that ruminating thought or that subjective experience over and over again, re-triggering yourself.
Yeah, that's such a great tip, and I'm one we can also apply to ourselves. And I know you've got some exciting things on your calendar coming up to help others with training. And speaking of which, even tomorrow. So this is Friday. So June, what is it? The 12th?
Yeah, the 12th.
You've got a webinar coming up. Can you share about that? And I'll put it.
Yeah. And I just want to say too, if it's after the webinar, you can still register and see the replay.
Replay available. Cool.
Yeah. So it's called Navigating Meltdowns, Tantrums, and Power Struggles with More Calm and Confidence. And we're going to go even deeper into the science behind what happens in our brains when we have these big emotions, so that we can make sense of the experience and we can help our kids do the same. So if you have anybody in your world who has kids who could use some tools and strategies around big emotions, like I create a very, very easygoing, shame-free environment. So it's not like, oh, you need parenting advice kind of share. It's more like, there's this person I met, I heard, and she's got these great tools and strategies. I loved her insights. Check this out. So please do share and pass on. It's a free webinar, and we'll be getting started tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific.
Cool. So you heard it here first. We've got the links in the chat. It's the 3 keys to navigate meltdowns. You can be there live. You could ask questions, even if you had them, like potentially, or just like follow up. And also, if you can't go live, I'm hearing you can watch the replay, which is great.
That's right.
That's so exciting. Yeah. And then the other thing, I know you've got a group that we can all join to learn more about upcoming events and tips that you've got and all this great research that you share. Where can we find you out there on the interwebs?
Yeah. I have a group called Raising Our Resilience Parents. And so it's an opportunity, like I go live, like Rachel does once a week, and share out tips. I've got a bunch of great videos there and strategies that you can, go ahead and scroll through and find some things that speak to you. And we have like over 600 parents who want to raise resilient kids, and even just being around other folks, working on similar goals can be so motivating and give us that little lift we need when we've had a rough day with the kids.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, we all need support, and like no one can do it alone, especially parents. And even if you're co-parenting with someone in the same household, my sense is like you still need support. It's not just about you and this other person doing stuff. Like we always need more than we know. And the best thing is to get it before you really need it. Like get it so that you're feeling you can do whatever you need to do and have that backbone of what you need to be resilient, really.
Absolutely. I'm all about rebuilding the village. Like, that's how we evolved. Like, those are our roots. That's where we came from. And, in the village, you have peers to study with or to swap ideas with, and you have mentors. And, people who've already walked down the road that you're going down. And it just makes so much sense to build that into our communities now. And it's such a gift in a way that we can do it virtually, and then, you know, be able to dip into these different sort of tribes or villages whenever we need it. And some people end up wanting to, you know, have a more formal mentorship relationship too, which is available. But it's just great to be able to, you know, at least, you know, check it out and have a chance to try on some things, see if it's a fit for you and your family.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you were able to come by, stop by today in the Pause tribe, our family, our village. And I so appreciate all of what you share, Vanessa. You've got amazing, incredible skills, and I'm just so glad to be like partnering with you and like helping you reach more parents that can help them be more resilient in the world. And it all starts with them and awareness and the pause, like you said. So excited for that and all that you do. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Rachel. And I know you have a really special event coming up next week that people should absolutely check out. Like,
yeah, so do you.
I think, but you know, what's exciting, I think, about these multiple day events, when I can just speak to it, is that it's almost like you get to train your brain because you keep showing up and getting a new little piece. And then afterward, you know, it's like you're in this practice of being curious and trying new tools, and it just sort of enlivens your own personal sort of development plan. I find, you know, I've been to many of these kinds of multi-day things, and it's really powerful. So if you have a chance to tune into Rachel's next week, I highly recommend it. And she's always got such great science-based, you know, hacks and tools for us all. So do check it out. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, it's kind of like a little mini immersion you can jump into and try out a way of living that may not be your norm, and then be like, oh yeah, this feels a little weird, or I kind of think this could work over time. And yeah, I'm just excited to host that and offer that. And same to you, sister. I'm just excited for our journeys together as we continue to help raise resilience and help people really just thrive in the ways that they know that is possible. So yay us, like yay you. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time, and hopefully see you in the Overwhelm Fix next week here on the Be the Pause channel. Bye everybody.
Bye everybody, have a great one.